Get Bradley Cooper on the phone. Jake Lloyd needs a star. Jake Lloyd deserves an Oscar for Anakin Skywalker in The Phantom Menace. Get Bradley Cooper on the phone.
The Phantom Menace. Written and directed by George Lucas. Executive producer George Lucas. Rick McCall, producer. Lucasfilm Limited. The Phantom Menace. Written and directed by George Lucas. Is an all-time epic masterpiece of film, story, characters, execution in telling the story, and lasting effect and impact on not only culture, contemporary culture, but all of society and future generations as well. The Phantom Menace, written and directed by George Lucas. An all-time epic masterpiece. All-time masterpiece. Gold standard for trilogy filmmaking. Sequel, prequel. It's all over the place. Galaxy adventure. Spanning the galaxy. If we were doing it here on Earth, it would be spanning the globe. Or perhaps going to the moon. Or maybe Mars or Pluto. But in this case, it's literally all over the galaxy. Known civilized galaxies, societies, each with their own way of doing things, their own set of rules, their own system of politics, also technology, as well as conveyance of acknowledgement toward a higher power, or the force, if you will. And so these characters and societies will have, as referred to, their gods. And then others will refer to the maker, as do the droids, to the humans that made them. And then, of course, you have the Force, as Qui-Gon Jinn, Jedi Knight and teacher, master teacher, as we are meeting this person in The Phantom Menace, written and directed by George Lucas, an all-time epic masterpiece. That Qui-Gon Jinn refers to the living Force as in the following manner. For instance, it was the will of the Force, and so on and so forth, that this happened or that happened. And then, nothing happens by accident. Now, Qui-Gon takes this philosophy of the Force as a living force, with a will, in some cases, for one thing, or another thing, or another direction. It was the will of the Force. Be mindful of the living Force, as Qui-Gon tells his Padawan learner. Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Padawan learner that we meet in The Phantom Menace, shows us in both behavior, costuming, perfectly cast as Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi, what it is to be a Jedi and a Jedi learner, a Padawan learner, as we see these now, that we did not see in the original trilogy. We did not know of the system whereby Jedi would, for lack of a better term, fill their ranks by going about the galaxy, and if they happen to run into or encounter, either by chance or, as Qui-Gon would say, nothing happens by accident or by chance. It's the will of the Force, the living Force, as he would put it. And this is the philosophy of George Lucas, distilled as that creator, the creator of this universe, the master and the maker of Star Wars, George Lucas, to show us the kind of world that these characters inhabit and also navigate. And in many ways, this world looks like our world today. Similar conversations taking place, very similar to our current political way of chancellor, and of course senators and representatives from planets and systems from across the galaxy. Thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of systems. And then we see that in each of these systems, some of them are already traveled and are familiar to the characters that are involved in the story, but then they come upon others that they know nothing about, other than it is part of the outer rim, or those territories that are beyond the reach of the Republic and the laws of the Republic, and the peace of the Republic, if you will. And this is the story that we are immersed into, Star Wars. And as we go, we see that the Padawan learner, as we saw in the original trilogy, was Luke Skywalker. Now we see what that means to live the life of a Padawan learner, as we see this in the young adult Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then we know nothing really of Obi-Wan Kenobi. We don't know where this character came from. We don't know where Qui-Gon came from. But as the story unfolds, and again in the next episode, episode 2, Attack of the Clones, we learn more about how these characters came to be, even in the episode previous to the one we're watching now. So when you watch episode 2, you will see the story explaining episode 1 and before episode 1. And then if you then rewatch episode 1, you will then in many ways be watching a different movie or a different story. And so these are brilliantly crafted and designed, as well as put together in the film room. The editing process, fantastic, absolutely amazing. The use of CGI, practical, so to speak, effects. And then, of course, miniatures, matte painting style. Of course, CGI is the new matte painting, as well as for practical sets, landscapes, locations, everything was used. Sets were built, people in costumes, including Jar Jar Binks, who is the key to all of this, and is in fact the key to all of this, in that because of Jar Jar Binks, we now have a world in which all people are movie makers, and can be movie makers, making their own movies, thanks to George Lucas, and thanks to Jar Jar Binks. And so if you like your ability to make a movie, if you like that you can make your own movie on your own phone, with all these apps and computer technology and so on and so forth, you can thank George Lucas, and Jar Jar is the key. And then of course, we see in many of these encounters on these planets and this story across the universe in the prequels, that we learn that these Jedi Masters were trained by other Jedi Masters. This was Yoda. At some point, we don't know who trained Yoda. But then we later learn that even with the Sith, they have a training system and an apprentice system. There are always two, no more, no less. And then it seems that the Sith only seek greater power and fear losing their power. And this does seem to be honestly and truthfully admitted throughout the prequels, through Senator Palpatine, and then Chancellor Palpatine, and then, as we know, this character, Darth Sidious, and then later the Emperor, as we first meet this character, the Emperor, in the original trilogy. But where did the Emperor come from? It was all politics. It was all about this going on in the Senate, stalemates, the bogging down of the process. Various agendas, motivations, fears, passions according to lust or true love or romance. Some seek peace, some seek war, some seek a profit. But it's the world of Star Wars. It's the way in which we view now this world. They talk a certain way, they act a certain way. It's a completely made up scenario, but written in a style where it's accessible by every person on the street, if you will. Every man. And speaking of that person, every person in the room, that's Jar Jar Binks. Jar Jar Binks is one of the funniest characters we've ever had, as well as the every person in the room. Whoever looks at Jar Jar and says, wow, I totally relate with that character, well, that's you in the movie. Enjoy the ride. Jar Jar Binks, the funniest and also one of the smartest and most insightful characters in the entire series. later becomes a senator, or representative, rather, from Naboo. And then, of course, because of the vote that Jar Jar cast, or rather the proposal that Jar Jar made on the floor of the Senate, so to speak, in that chamber, this gave then, of course, the Chancellor Palpatine, the chance to make his next move, which was to, by executive order, create a Grand Army of the Republic, which we know later was part of a plan preceding Phantom Menace, Episode 1, preceding Episode 1, to manipulate all things to a certain end, and that would be that this senator from Naboo, I'm going to learn a little bit more about the senator's backstory, the tragedy of the Plagueis and so on and so forth in Episode 3. But the way the prequels are told, you move around so fast, not only in geographical or time-space location, of traveling through hyperspace all over the galaxy, you also have, at some point, development for each of these characters. Of course, this is Anakin Skywalker. The story is about Anakin Skywalker. Very avant-garde. The most different movie presentation of any plot or movie style ever presented. George Lucas, an all-time epic, masterful filmmaker. Congratulations to George Lucas. We're going to be talking some more about Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, on our next episode. But, of course, today we've been looking deeply into the characters and the world that George Lucas is using to tell us this story, including special effects, all of which are designed to tell and support the telling of the story. And nothing is wasted in any of these movies, I can tell you this. I've watched these of them several times, possibly hundreds of times. I just got done watching The Phantom Menace 3 times today, and I guarantee you, The Phantom Menace is an all-time epic masterpiece. Epic masterpiece, the gold standard, possibly, right alongside Lord of the Rings, by Peter Jackson. Now, friends, a note here about some of the characters. Speaking of Anakin Skywalker, Jake Lloyd is played by Jake Lloyd in The Phantom Menace. Jake Lloyd deserves an Oscar for Anakin Skywalker in The Phantom Menace. Yeah, it's pure and simple. When you look at what this child actor did, so to speak, he's supposed to be playing a 10-year-old, I believe, in the movie, Anakin Skywalker. If you even look at this movie with no sound effects, no music, you can follow the movement of the character and even the story itself along just by watching these actors. They're brilliantly cast, fantastically directed, it's beautifully produced, designed, and the outcome is absolutely amazing. All-time epic masterpiece, The Phantom Menace. And Jake Lloyd deserves an Oscar for Anakin Skywalker in The Phantom Menace. Jake Lloyd needs a star in Hollywood. I guarantee it. Jake Lloyd, an all-time classic actor, portraying one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic, characters in movie history, the history of all movies in cinema, and possibly now going back to the beginning of recorded time, even upon the caves where we saw the drawings of people hunting buffalo and so on. Friends, the masterful way in which this film has been brought to us, combining sound, music, musicians, not only that, but actors, producers, contributors, artists, novelists, and also conceptual designers and futurists, as well as fans, also other materials that were presented alongside many years ago from the beginning of the original trilogy, comic books, the EU, not to mention legends. Friends, we're looking at all of it. The Phantom Menace, an all-time epic masterpiece of film, Trilogy, written and directed by George Lucas. Executive producer, George Lucas. Rick McCollum, producer. 10 out of 10, baby. The Phantom Menace, an all-time epic masterpiece. And remember, friends, the Prequels is the best Star Wars that there is. And I am your host, Mr. The Prequels. And may the Force be with us. And we'll see you next time. The Phantom Menace, written and directed by George Lucas. And all-time epic masterpiece. The Phantom Menace, written and directed by George Lucas. An all-time epic masterpiece.